Some moments in life leave scars that time can't erase. That fateful night was one of those moments. The man who had once vowed to cherish and protect me had already shattered my trust, turning everything I believed in into a nightmare. But betrayal alone wasn't enough. He wanted to break me entirely. It happened suddenly. He grabbed my hair, yanked it so harshly that I cried out in pain, then slapped me across the face with such force that I collapsed onto the floor, my pregnant body slamming into the cold ground. What followed was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We're excited to connect with all of you, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing content. Now back to the story. My name is Emma Wright, and I'm 28 years old. If anyone had told me just a few years ago that my life would turn into a nightmare before ultimately becoming something even greater than I ever expected, I would have laughed. But life has a way of showing you harsh truths, and it doesn't always do so gently. I once believed in love, in promises, and in forever. I thought that marriage was built on trust, loyalty, and devotion, but I was completely wrong. So wrong that I could never have prepared myself for the reality that followed. I met Nathan Walker when I was 23. At the time, I was living in the city of Arlington, a place I had always dreamed of building a future in. I was an aspiring fashion designer working at a small boutique, hoping one day to launch my own line. Nathan, however, was nothing like me. He was rich, confident, and irresistibly charming. From the moment he walked into that boutique with a smile that seemed to light up the room, I was drawn to him, just like a moth to a flame. "Did you design this?" he had asked, holding up one of my creations, a sleek, elegant dress. I nodded shyly. "Yes, I did." "It's incredible," he said, gazing at me with a warmth in his eyes. "Just like you." And just like that, he swept me off my feet. For months, he showered me with attention, took me to expensive dinners, and whispered sweet promises about our future together. He made me feel special, chosen, and loved. So when he proposed, I didn't hesitate. I said yes, thinking I had found the man of my dreams. But dreams can turn into nightmares faster than you think. The first time I met Nathan's mother, Isabella Walker, I realized that I was nothing but an outsider in their world. Isabella was the head of a prestigious international business empire, and she made it clear that I was not worthy of her son. The setting was a grand gala held at the Walker estate, and I walked in wearing my best dress, hoping to make a good impression. But when Isabella looked at me, her icy gaze scanned me from head to toe, as if I were nothing but a stain on her perfect world. "You're the designer my son is so infatuated with?" she asked, swirling her wineglass with a forced smile. "How unexpected." Nathan squeezed my hand reassuringly, but deep down, I knew I was not welcome in their world. From that night on, things started to change. Nathan, the man who had once adored me, began pulling away. He spent more time working, more time at his mother's estate, and less time with me. By the time I was 7 months pregnant, I knew something was seriously wrong. Our apartment had become a place of silence and tension. The man who had once held me close at night now barely even looked at me. And then, on one particular night, he shattered what little was left of my world. I will never forget that night, like a scar burned into my soul. The apartment was eerily quiet. I sat on the couch, rubbing my swollen belly, trying to ignore the constant ache in my back. 7 months pregnant with Nathan's twins, I should have been excited, should have felt joy about the future. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Nathan had been avoiding me for weeks, coming home late, speaking little, and when he did, he smelled like expensive cologne that didn't belong to him. My gut told me the truth, though my heart refused to accept it. And then that night, it all came crashing down. Nathan walked into the apartment, his face stone cold, his eyes empty. He didn't greet me, didn't even look at me properly. Instead, he stood in the doorway, his fists clenched, as if preparing for a fight. "I can't do this anymore, Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temple in frustration. "I mean, I'm done with you, with this, with everything." The words hit me like a blade. "You're leaving me?" Nathan finally looked at me then, and for the first time I saw it. The truth. The man I had loved was gone. My mother was right, he said, his voice cold and detached. You don't belong in my world. I should have listened to her from the beginning. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling a rush of instinct to protect my children. Nathan, please, we're about to have children together. This isn't just about us anymore. He laughed bitterly. That's exactly the problem. I never wanted this, Emma. I don't want you, and I sure as hell don't want to be a father. The room started to spin. My legs felt weak, but I refused to break. So, this is what it's really about? I whispered, my voice quivering with a mix of disbelief and anger. You're choosing money over us? Your mother's approval over your own children? His face twisted with frustration. You don't get it. If I stay with you, I lose everything. The money, the business, my future. And for what? A life I never wanted. Tears filled my eyes, but my pain was transforming into rage. The man I thought I knew was nothing but a coward, one who had chosen greed over love. I should have stayed silent. I should have let him walk away. But instead, I found my voice. You're pathetic, I spat, my voice shaking. You're nothing without your mother's money, without me. One day you'll realize that you lost everything that ever truly mattered. And that's when it happened. Nathan's jaw tightened, his eyes filled with fury. Without warning, his hand shot out and slapped me across the face so hard that I stumbled back. My head snapped to the side, and pain exploded across my cheek. My vision blurred with tears, but before I could react, he grabbed my hair and yanked it so hard that I gasped, forcing me to look at him. You don't get to talk to me like that, he snarled, his face inches from mine. You're nothing without me, Emma. Nothing. I winced as my scalp burned, but I was no longer afraid. I was angry. I looked straight into his eyes, refusing to break. No, Nathan, I said, my voice now eerily calm despite the tears that filled my eyes. I am everything without you, and one day you'll beg for my forgiveness. He scoffed, shoving me away like I was nothing. Don't count on it. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the apartment, leaving me alone, pregnant, broken, and abandoned. I touched my burning cheek, breathing heavily, shaking. But something inside me shifted. I knew I would never let Nathan or his mother win. One day, I would rise from the ashes, and when I did, I would take everything from him, just as he had taken everything from me. That night, when I sat on the cold floor, my hand pressed to my cheek, tears streaming down my face, I realized I was no longer broken. My children inside me were still depending on me. They were the reason I would fight. They were the reason I would rise. And that night, I vowed that I would not just survive, I would thrive. I couldn't even withdraw a single dollar. I was homeless, 7 months pregnant, and completely alone. I knocked on doors, desperately begging for help, but no one wanted to get involved. Nathan's family was far too powerful. If anyone tried to help me, they'd face the wrath of the walkers. I'm sorry, Emma, but I can't risk my business for this, one friend said, his voice filled with regret. I wish I could help, but I can't afford to lose my job. Maybe you should go back to Nathan. He's the father, after all. I refused. I would rather starve on the streets than crawl back to the man who had broken me. So I did what I had to do. I took whatever jobs I could find, cleaning shifts at motels, working as a night waitress at a rundown diner, stitching clothes for a local tailor. My feet swelled, my back ached, but I didn't stop. I barely slept, barely ate, but every single dollar I earned, I saved. I knew that one day my time would come. The day I gave birth, I was alone. I had no husband by my side, no family waiting in the wings. Just me. It was in a cheap, overcrowded hospital, and the pain was unbearable. But when I heard the first cries of my twins, a boy and a girl, the pain disappeared. I held them close, their small, fragile bodies fitting perfectly in my arms. I will never let anyone hurt you, I whispered to them, my tears slipping down my face. I named them Alexander and Lily, names that belonged only to them, no ties to Nathan, no part of his legacy. I refused to put Nathan's name on their birth certificates. As far as I was concerned, he was already dead to us. But deep inside, I knew the truth. One day, he would regret everything. He would realize that he had walked away from the only thing that truly mattered. But by that time, it would be too late. I didn't want to just survive. I wanted to thrive. Nathan and Isabella thought they had destroyed me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I was determined to become more successful than Nathan could have ever imagined. I would build something greater than his empire. And when the time came, I would take everything from him. But I knew I couldn't do it overnight. I needed time, I needed a plan. That's when I realized my one true skill: fashion. I had spent years designing clothes, working in boutiques, dreaming of one day starting my own brand. But I had always been too afraid to chase that dream. Not anymore. If no one would give me a chance, I would take it myself. While the twins slept at night, I sketched designs, cut fabric, and stitched everything by hand. I poured every ounce of my anger, pain, and determination into each piece I made. Then, one day, inspiration struck. A high-profile charity gala was coming up, one hosted by some of the wealthiest families in the city, including the Walkers. I knew this was my moment. I wasn't just going to attend this gala, I was going to make sure everyone there would remember my name. And that night would be the first step toward my ultimate revenge. I had no invitation, no connections, no status, but I had talent and a plan. The Walkers were hosting one of the most prestigious charity galas of the year. An event where the rich and powerful gathered to flaunt their wealth and sip champagne, pretending to care about charity. Isabella would be there. Nathan would be there. And so would I, not as a guest but as a force of nature they weren't ready for. I spent every waking moment designing, sewing, and perfecting a dress that would change my life. It was deep emerald green, a color that screamed confidence. The fabric hugged my body like a second skin, flowing smoothly down in layers, giving the illusion of liquid emerald. The open-back design was bold yet elegant, while delicate golden threads wove across the fabric like lightning streaking through a thunderstorm. "If they won't give me a seat at their table," I muttered, running my fingers over the final stitches, "then I'll burn the whole damn table down." The night of the gala, I arrived without an invitation. At first, no one noticed me. I was just another woman stepping out of a cab, my heels clicking against the marble pavement as I made my way up the grand staircase. But then they saw the dress. The moment I entered the room, all eyes turned to me. Women gasped, men stared, and whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is she? That dress is stunning. I've never seen anything like it before." I walked with purpose, chin held high, as if I belonged there because, for the first time in a long while, I did. And then my gaze landed on Isabella and Nathan. They were at the center of the room, surrounded by their elite circle. Isabella, as always, looked poised, sipping her wine as though she were the queen of the room, while Nathan stood beside her, looking polished and powerful. But the moment Nathan's eyes met mine, he froze. His expression shifted from shock to disbelief as he realized who I was. I could see the confusion and fear start to register in his eyes. I smiled to myself. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Isabella's gaze followed Nathan's, and she too seemed to realize who had just walked into their world. Her usual arrogance faltered for a split second, replaced by a look of disdain. She studied me, her eyes narrowing, as though trying to figure out how this was possible. "You shouldn't be here," Isabella finally said, her voice as sharp as ever, but there was a tremor underneath the words. I didn't flinch. Instead, I took a sip from a glass of champagne that a passing waiter had offered me. It was the perfect moment. "Oh, but I should be," I replied smoothly, a knowing smile tugging at my lips. "You see, Isabella, I belong here more than you'll ever understand." Her lips pressed into a tight line, eyes full of disdain. "You're nobody," she hissed, trying to dismiss me. I laughed softly, my eyes never leaving hers. Not for long. That was the truth. This night wasn't about getting revenge, at least not yet. This was about ensuring that the world would know my name before either Isabella or Nathan could speak again. Just as she was about to respond, a woman stepped forward, a socialite with connections in the fashion industry. "Darling, that dress is absolutely exquisite. Who designed it?" she asked, her eyes wide with admiration. I smiled. "I did." She gasped in delight. "You're a designer? Do you have a label?" "Not yet," I answered, sipping my champagne, "but I will soon." And just like that, my plan was set in motion. I was pulled into conversation after conversation, people eager to know where they could buy my designs. I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was becoming the center of attention. That night, I walked away with more than just admiration. I walked away with my first real opportunity. As I passed Nathan one last time, I leaned in just enough to whisper in his ear, "This is only the beginning." Then, without looking back, I disappeared into the night, leaving him standing there, watching me go. Just as he had once done to me, but this time, it was I who held all the power. The next morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. Designers, journalists, and socialites alike were all asking the same question: who is Emma Wright? And I made sure they all got the answer. With the money I had saved from working endless jobs and the connections I made at the gala, I took my biggest risk yet. I launched my own fashion brand, Wright Couture. It began as a small online boutique, showcasing a handful of exclusive handcrafted designs, each one carrying the same bold, striking elegance as the dress I wore that night. A dress shouldn't just be worn. It should make the wearer unforgettable, became my motto. Within 6 months, Wright Couture went viral. Hollywood stylists began reaching out to me. Models wanted to wear my pieces, and luxury magazines began featuring my work. Suddenly, I wasn't just another designer. I was a threat. Meanwhile, Nathan's empire was crumbling. The Walker family business, once untouchable, was bleeding money. Poor investments, a failing economy, and worst of all, Isabella's iron grip was suffocating it. I kept an eye on the news, watching as they struggled to keep the company afloat. Walker Enterprises is facing severe financial losses. Investors are pulling out due to poor management. What was once a mighty empire is now on the brink of collapse. Each headline made me smile. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't just want to watch Nathan suffer. I wanted to be the reason he lost everything. I made my move. I used silent investors, people who believed in my vision, to start buying shares in Walker Enterprises, little by little. I took control, making sure my name never appeared in the records until the day I owned the majority shares. "Underestimating me," Isabella said, her voice shaking as she looked at Nathan. Nathan finally spoke, his voice strained. "Emma, you did all of this?" I met his gaze, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing. No pain, no regret, no love, only satisfaction. "I built something from nothing, Nathan," I said, my voice steady. "While you were busy protecting your mother's empire, I was creating my own." His hands clenched into fists, his eyes flashing with rage. "You can't do this." I smirked, feeling the thrill of my success. I already did. And then I delivered the final blow. "As the new majority shareholder, my first official act is to remove both you and Isabella from your positions." Nathan shot up from his chair, his eyes wild with anger. "You can't just—" My palm connected with his cheek so hard that the sound echoed in the silent boardroom. Nathan staggered back, his face turning red from both the impact and the humiliation. Before he could recover, I grabbed him by the collar, yanked him closer, and whispered, so only he could hear. "This is for the night you hit me. For the night you pulled my hair and left me to suffer alone." I let him go, watching as he struggled to process what had just happened. Then I turned to Isabella. She looked at me with pure hatred, but there was something else in her eyes too. Fear. Because she knew that I had taken everything from them, and there was nothing she could do to stop me. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out of the boardroom, leaving Nathan and Isabella in the ruins of the empire they had once ruled. That night, when I arrived home, Alexander and Lily ran into my arms. "Mommy, did you win?" Lily asked, looking up at me with bright, innocent eyes. I smiled, brushing her soft curls back. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "I won." Because revenge wasn't about ruining Nathan's life. It was about building one so powerful, so successful, that he no longer had the ability to define me. I had risen, and I had done it without him. Thank you for being a part of this journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more engaging content. Your support means the world, and there's so much more to come. Stay tuned for the next exciting story.